Latrella Jones pressed the publish button and leaned back in her chair with satisfaction. Her new blog post was ready, a review of fall fashion trends that was sure to attract the attention of her growing audience. Outside the window of her tidy apartment in North Lupa, one of Austin's typical bedroom communities, the sun painted the sky orange. Latrella smiled at her reflection on the laptop screen. 28 years old, beautiful, ambitious, and just a few steps away from real success. 3 years ago, when she started her blog, Life According to Latrella, few believed it would amount to anything. She was an ordinary middle-class girl with no connections or startup capital. But Latrella was determined. She studied social media algorithms, mastered Photoshop, and learned to write texts that grab your attention from the very first lines. She shot videos on the streets of Austin, interviewed local celebrities, shared recipes, fashion finds, and life advice. Gradually, followers began to arrive, first by the hundreds, then by the thousands. Now she had almost 45,000 followers, not a record for an influential blogger, but enough to attract advertisers and invitations to local events. Latrella dreamed of more: six-figure contracts with major brands, millions of followers, her own clothing or cosmetics line, and she was willing to work for that dream. The sound of an incoming message interrupted her thoughts. It was DeMarcus, her fiancé, whom she had been dating for 2 years and planned to marry next spring. "Did you remember about tomorrow's photo shoot? Did the dress arrive?" he asked. Latrella quickly typed a reply. "Yes, it just arrived. It looks amazing. I can't wait to show you the photos." The wedding photo shoot was her new idea for her blog. Not a real wedding, just a photo shoot in a beautiful white dress against the backdrop of picturesque Austin locations. This kind of content always got a lot of views. Her followers loved romance and beautiful stories. DeMarcus was skeptical at first, but then agreed that it could be a good PR move. Latrella looked at the dress hanging on the closet door. Cream satin and lace, a graceful mermaid silhouette, a small train. It had cost her a pretty penny, but she considered it an investment in her career. Her phone beeped again. This time it was a notification from Instagram. Someone had commented on her latest post, where she announced tomorrow's photo shoot. Latrella frowned when she saw the username, J. Fraze, Jerian Fraser, her ex-boyfriend, whom she had broken up with almost 3 years ago, shortly before meeting DeMarcus. "You'll be the most beautiful bride in the world, as always." "As it should be," the comment read. Latrella hesitated, but then clicked like and replied with a simple thanks. There was no point in ignoring him. Jerian was one of her first followers and continued to follow all her posts. Their relationship hadn't ended well. He was too possessive, too controlling. But a lot of time had passed since then, and she decided that he was just supporting her as an old friend. The next morning was clear and windless, perfect weather for a photo shoot. Latrella met her photographer, her friend Kiana, at Zilker Park, one of Austin's picturesque spots overlooking the lake and city skyline. "You look amazing!" Kiana exclaimed when Latrella stepped out of the car in her wedding dress, with professional makeup and an elegant hairstyle. "DeMarcus is a lucky man." "It's just for the blog," Latrella smiled, adjusting her veil. "But I hope when it comes to the real wedding I'll look just as good." They spent several hours taking pictures in different parts of the park, against the backdrop of the water, among the flowers, under the spreading oak trees. Latrella felt the stares of passers-by. Some smiled, others looked curiously, probably trying to catch a glimpse of the groom and the rest of the wedding party. "Let's take the last shots by the bridge," Kiana suggested as the sun began to set. "The golden light will make it magical." They headed toward the pedestrian bridge, and Latrella couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching them. She looked back several times but didn't notice anything suspicious among the people walking in the park. "Is something wrong?" Kiana asked, noticing her uneasiness. "No, everything's fine." Latrella shook her head. "Just a strange feeling. It's probably because of the dress. It's not every day you walk through the park in a wedding dress." The latest photos really turned out great. The setting sun bathed everything in warm golden tones. Latrella's dress sparkled, and a sincere smile played on her face. "This is going to be amazing," Kiana said, looking at the shots on the camera screen. "Your followers are going to go crazy." When she got home, Latrella immediately uploaded several of the best photos to her blog and social media with the caption, "Wedding dress fitting, not a real wedding, just a photo shoot for content, but someday, who knows? #future bride, #wedding look, #just a photo shoot." The reaction was immediate. Comments and likes poured in one after another. "You look amazing! That dress looks like it was made for you. Did DeMarcus see this? He must be in shock at such beauty. When's the wedding? Did you two secretly get married?" Latrella responded to the comments, laughing and explaining that it was just a photo shoot for her blog and that there were no real wedding plans yet. Among the dozens of messages, she noticed a comment from Jerian. "You deserve the most lavish, most beautiful wedding and the most loving husband." Something about that message made her shiver. It sounded almost ominous. Or was she just imagining things? Latrella decided to ignore the comment and continued chatting with other followers. Her phone rang. It was DeMarcus. "I saw your photos," he said. "You look like a real princess." "Thanks," Latrella smiled, feeling her heart warm at his words. "I'll be home soon. I'll just stop by the store to pick up something for dinner." "Let me pick you up," DeMarcus offered. "It's getting dark." "No, it's just a stone's throw from home. I'll be quick." They agreed to meet at her place in half an hour. Latrella finished replying to comments, changed into her regular clothes, and left the apartment. The evening air was cool and fresh after a hot day. She took a deep breath, enjoying the moment of calm after a busy day. A small convenience store was located a couple of blocks from her house. Latrella quickly bought everything she needed for dinner: steaks, vegetables for a salad, and a bottle of wine. She wanted to celebrate with DeMarcus the successful photo shoot, which was already garnering a record number of views. As she left the store, she felt someone's eyes on her. Looking back, Latrella saw no one but a couple of passers-by hurrying about their business. "Nerves," she thought, quickening her pace. The road home passed through a small, well-lit park. Latrella wasn't usually afraid to walk here at night. The neighborhood was quiet, and she knew the way well. But today, every rustle made her jump. She took out her phone and dialed DeMarcus's number, just to hear his voice and calm down. "I'm almost home," she said when he answered. "You won't believe it, but the post with the photos has already gotten over 10,000 likes. That's an absolute record." "Not surprising," DeMarcus replied. "You looked incredible in those photos. I'll be waiting for you at home. The door's open." Latrella smiled and put her phone in her pocket. It was only a few minutes' walk to her house. She quickened her pace, looking forward to a cozy evening with her loved one. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. Quick, decisive steps. Before she could turn around, someone grabbed her from behind, covering her mouth with their hand. The bag of groceries fell from her hands, spilling its contents onto the ground. "Finally, we're together," whispered a familiar voice in her ear. "My beautiful bride." Latrella tried to scream, but the hand covering her mouth was too tight. She struggled desperately to break free, but the grip was too strong. The last thing she felt was a sharp pain in her neck, and then darkness engulfed everything around her. An hour later, DeMarcus began to worry. Latrella still hadn't come home and wasn't answering her phone. This wasn't like her at all. He decided to follow her usual route from the store to her house. In a small park, he found scattered groceries and Latrella's phone with a cracked screen, but the girl herself was nowhere to be seen. With growing horror, DeMarcus dialed the emergency number. "Please help," he said in a trembling voice. "My fiancée is missing." DeMarcus Wilkins sat in the empty living room of his apartment, staring blankly at the wall. It was 2 a.m, and Latrella still hadn't come home. After finding her phone and scattered groceries in the park, he was overcome with panic. He called all her friends and acquaintances, checked nearby hospitals, but Latrella was nowhere to be found. There was a knock at the door. It was the police he had called several hours earlier. DeMarcus jumped up and threw open the door, greeting 2 uniformed officers. "Mr. Wilkins?" asked the female officer, introducing herself as Officer Ramirez. "We received your report about a missing girl. Can you tell us more about what happened?" DeMarcus led the police into the living room and told them everything he knew. About Latrella's photo shoot, how she was going to stop by the store before coming home, about the phone he found, and the scattered groceries. "This isn't like her at all," DeMarcus's voice trembled. Latrella is always in touch, always on time. Something happened, I'm sure. The officers wrote down the information, asked standard questions about possible conflicts or strange behavior on Latrella's part recently, took her photo, and promised to start the search immediately. Given the circumstances of her disappearance, we will refer the case to detectives, Officer Ramirez said. They will contact you in the morning. In the meantime, try to remember any details that might help in the search. DeMarcus spent a sleepless night. He sat in the kitchen, aimlessly scrolling through Latrella's social media, rereading the comments under her latest posts, hoping to find some kind of clue. The photos of her in her wedding dress had garnered thousands of likes and hundreds of comments, mostly enthusiastic and well-wishing. But there was something that bothered him, a vague sense of unease that he couldn't quite put his finger on. At 9 o'clock, the doorbell rang again. Two people stood on the doorstep, a tall woman in a strict suit and a burly man with military bearing. Detective Shani Magruder, the woman introduced herself, showing her badge. And this is my partner, Detective Tyrone Butts. We're investigating the disappearance of Latrella Jones. May we come in? DeMarcus led the detectives into the living room. Shani Magruder looked tired, but her gaze was sharp and attentive. Tyrone Butts stood slightly apart, observing and taking notes in a small notebook. Tell us everything again, Shani asked, sitting down on the sofa. Every detail, even if it seems insignificant to you. DeMarcus repeated his story, this time in more detail. He mentioned the photo shoot, the comments on social media, Latrella's last phone call. Did she sound normal? Not upset? Tyrone asked. No, she was in a good mood. She was happy about the success of her post, talking about her plans for the evening. DeMarcus paused, remembering their last conversation. She didn't mention anyone following her or anything like that. Shani nodded, making notes in her notebook. We need access to her social media accounts, passwords, logins, everything you have. Of course, DeMarcus said, pulling out Latrella's laptop. We have no secrets from each other. I know all her passwords. The detectives spent the next hour studying Latrella's blog and social media accounts. Shani was particularly interested in comments and private messages, looking for potential stalkers or haters. Does she have any unhappy followers? Maybe someone who left threatening or nasty comments? She asked, scrolling through the long feed. DeMarcus shook his head. There are some negative comments sometimes, but nothing serious. Latrella isn't the kind of blogger who creates drama or provokes scandals. What about ex-boyfriends? Anyone she didn't break up with on good terms? DeMarcus thought for a moment. Before me, she was in a relationship with a guy named Jerian Fraser. They dated for about a year, but broke up before we met. She didn't talk about him much, only that he was too possessive. Tyrone looked up from his laptop screen. Jerian Fraser? Isn't that the user J Phrase who's been commenting on almost all of her posts for the last few months? DeMarcus walked over to the detective and glanced at the screen. Sure enough, a user with the nickname J Phrase had left comments on most of Latrella's posts, especially those where she appeared with DeMarcus or talked about their relationship. It could be him, DeMarcus frowned. I didn't pay attention to the usernames on her blog. Shani came over and looked at the screen too. Interesting. Let's see what he wrote under her latest posts. They scrolled through the comments under the photos of her in her wedding dress. A comment from J Phrase was among the first. You deserve the most lavish, most beautiful wedding, and the most loving husband. Sounds pretty harmless, Tyrone remarked. But look at his previous comments. Shani scrolled up the page, finding older posts. I always thought we'd get married by the ocean. You'd look amazing with the sunset behind you. And another one. Some dreams never die. Some promises can't be broken. DeMarcus felt a chill run down his spine. That definitely sounds strange. Do you have this Jerian's contact information? Shani asked. No, but I can ask Latrella's friends. Someone must know him. Do that, Shani nodded. We'll run him through our database in the meantime. While DeMarcus called Latrella's friends, the detectives continued to study her online activity. Tyrone discovered several personal messages from J Phrase that became increasingly insistent and strange over time. Listen to this, he said, reading one of the messages sent about a month ago. I saw you yesterday at the cafe on 6th Street. You were wearing a green dress and looked like a goddess. I wanted to come over, but I didn't want to embarrass you in front of your friend. Soon, very soon, we'll have time just for the two of us. Like before. Like it should be. Sounds like a stalker, Shani frowned. Did Latrella mention anything about this? DeMarcus, who had just finished his phone call, shook his head. No, nothing like that. But Kiana, her photographer friend, just told me that Latrella mentioned several times during yesterday's photo shoot that she felt someone watching her. They chalked it up to curious passers-by, but now it looks much more disturbing, Shani finished for him. Does Kiana have any contact information for this Jerian? No, but she gave me the address of Tashiana, Latrella's former roommate. They lived together when Latrella was dating Jerian. If anyone knows where to find him, it's her. The detectives decided to visit Tashiana immediately. On the way, Tyrone contacted the station to run Jerian Fraser through the database. Nothing serious, he reported when he finished the call. One arrest for disorderly conduct 3 years ago. A fine. No other problems with the law. Tashiana Brooks lived in a small townhouse in the eastern part of Austin. She looked alarmed when she opened the door to the detectives and DeMarcus. I've seen the news, she said, inviting them inside. I can't believe Latrella is missing. Is she okay? We hope so, Shani replied. And we need your help. What can you tell us about Jerian Fraser? Tashiana visibly tensed at the mention of that name. Jerian? What does he have to do with this? We're just checking all leads, Tyrone replied evasively. What can you tell us about him? Tashiana sighed and sank down onto the sofa. Jerian and Latrella had been dating for about a year. At first, everything was fine. He seemed nice and caring. But gradually, he became very possessive. He checked her phone, was jealous of every man she talked to, even her co-workers. Then he started talking about marriage, children. He was planning their whole life, even though they had only been dating for a few months. What happened next? Shani asked. Latrella started her blog, and that was the last straw. Jerian couldn't accept that she was communicating with her followers and posting her photos. They had a big fight, and she broke up with him. He wouldn't take it, stalked her, called her in the middle of the night, waited outside her house. In the end, Latrella threatened to call the police, and he seemed to back off. Seemed? Tyrone asked. Tashiana shook her head uncertainly. I'm not sure. He stopped showing up physically, but I noticed his comments on her blog, and sometimes when we went out I had the feeling he was following us. But I couldn't prove anything, and Latrella didn't want to talk about him anymore, especially after she met DeMarcus. Do you have his contact information? Address? Phone number? Shani asked. The phone number is probably no longer valid. It was 3 years ago. But I know where he worked, at Sound City, a music store in Guadalupe. He was an assistant manager. After receiving this information, the detectives thanked Tashiana and headed to Sound City. On the way, Shani called the station to send a patrol car to Jerian's last known address. Sound City was a 2-story building filled with musical instruments, records, and equipment. The manager, a graying man wearing a Metallica t-shirt, confirmed that Jerian Fraser still worked there but had taken the day off. He called last night and said he wasn't feeling well, the manager explained. He's usually very responsible and rarely misses a shift. Did you notice anything strange about his behavior lately? Tyrone asked. The manager thought for a moment. Well, he's always been a little strange, quiet, withdrawn, but a good worker. In the last few days, he seemed more agitated than usual. Yesterday, before he left, he said something about his life changing for the better soon. I thought maybe he found a new job or something like that. Do you know where he lives? Shani asked. I should have his address in his file, just a moment. The manager went into a back room and returned with a piece of paper. Here, this is from his job application. I'm not sure he still lives there, but it's the best I have. Shani thanked the manager and took the piece of paper with the address. One more question. Do you know if Jerian has any other places he might go? Relatives, friends, maybe a country house? The manager shook his head. Not sure. He's not very sociable, but he sometimes mentioned his uncle's cottage outside the city, where he liked to spend time alone. I think it's somewhere near Lake Travis, but I'm not sure. It was an important lead. The detectives thanked the manager and left the store. We need to check his apartment, Shani said, dialing a number on her phone, and find out about any properties in the Travis Lake area that belong to anyone in the Fraser family. Patrol officers had already arrived at the apartment building where Jerian was believed to be living. Neighbors confirmed that they had seen him last night. He had returned home around 8 and then left again with a large bag about an hour later. "We need a search warrant for his apartment," Tyrone said as they pulled up to the house, "and run a check on all properties linked to the Fraser family in the area." While the warrant was being processed, the detectives questioned other residents of the building. One of the neighbors, an elderly woman from the first floor, provided an interesting detail. "Last night when he was leaving, I was walking my dog. He seemed strangely agitated. He was muttering something under his breath about she finally understood and that they would be together, as they were meant to be. I thought the guy finally had a girlfriend." This confirmed their suspicions. Shawnee immediately contacted the missing persons team to expand the search area to include the Travis Lake area. The search warrant arrived 2 hours later. Jerian's apartment was small and tidy, almost sterile, but one wall in the bedroom caught the detective's attention. It was completely covered with printed photos of Latrella, clippings from local newspapers mentioning her blog, and screenshots of her posts. In the center of this collage hung an enlarged photo of Latrella in a wedding dress, the same one she had posted yesterday. "Damn," Tyrone exhaled. "Looks like our guy is really obsessed." Shani looked closely at the wall, then shifted her gaze to the desk. There was an open laptop. She put on gloves and carefully ran her finger across the touchpad, waking the screen from sleep mode. "Look at this," she called to her partner. The screen showed a map with a route mapped out to a point near Lake Travis. Shawnee quickly took a photo of the screen and sent the coordinates to the team. "We need to check this place out immediately," she said. "If Latrella is there, every minute counts." In a desk drawer, they found old letters addressed to James Fraser, presumably Jerian's uncle. The return address matched the area marked on the map in the laptop. "Bingo," Tyrone said. "Now we have the exact address." Shanice immediately contacted the team and requested backup to check the house by the lake. Then she turned to DeMarcus, who had been waiting outside the whole time. "We have a serious suspect and a location where Latrella is believed to be," she told him. "We're heading there immediately." "I'm coming with you," DeMarcus said firmly. "This could be dangerous," Tyrone warned. "She's my fiancée. I have to be there." The detectives exchanged glances. Then Shani nodded. "All right, but you're staying in the car and doing only what we tell you to do. Is that clear?" DeMarcus agreed, and they headed for Travis Lake, where, according to their information, there was an old hunting lodge that belonged to the Fraser family. On the way, Tyrone received another important piece of information from the team at the station. "We just got the results of the analysis of Jerian's social media page," he said, looking at a message on his tablet. "Over the past 3 years, he has created at least 10 fake accounts from which he followed Latrella and commented on her posts. Some of the comments are clearly threatening, especially after she announced her engagement to DeMarcus." "What's his motive?" Shani asked, keeping her eyes on the road. "Why now?" "Maybe the wedding dress photo shoot was the last straw," Tyrone suggested. "He saw her as a bride and completely lost it." They were approaching their destination when Shawnee received a message from the support team. A car registered to Jerian Fraser had been spotted parked near the house. "He's there," she said, stopping the car at a safe distance from the house. "DeMarcus, you stay here. We'll let you know as soon as we find out anything." The detectives joined the team of police officers surrounding the small wooden house on the lake. Shawnee took the megaphone. "Jerian Fraser, this is the Austin Police Department. Come out with your hands up." The house was silent. No movement, no response. "One more time," Shawnee said, repeating the demand. Suddenly, a shadow flashed across one of the windows. "Latrella!" DeMarcus shouted, jumping out of the car. Tyrone barely managed to grab him before he rushed toward the house. "Stay back!" he ordered, holding DeMarcus back. "Let us do our job." Shawnee gave the signal to the SWAT team. The police officers quickly and smoothly approached the house, ready to storm inside. The Austin Police SWAT team moved quickly and efficiently. The wooden door of the hunting lodge cracked under the force of the battering ram, and officers in protective gear poured inside, filling the quiet space of the forest near Travis Lake with loud commands and the sound of heavy boots. Shanice Magruder and Tyrone Butts followed the capture team, weapons at the ready. The musty smell of a room that hadn't been aired out in a long time hit their noses, mixed with something chemical and pungent. "Police! Don't move!" shouted the officers as they checked room after room. "Clear!" one reported. "Clear!" echoed another from the next room. Then there was silence. Tyrone felt a chill run down his spine. Then a muffled voice came from the far room. "Detectives, you'd better see this." Shani and Tyrone exchanged glances and headed in the indicated direction. The room at the back of the house turned out to be a small bedroom with a single window overlooking the lake. An officer stood in the doorway, his face looking pale even under his protective mask. Shani entered first and froze in the doorway. In the middle of the room stood a bed covered with a white lace bedspread. Lying on it, dressed in a wedding dress, the very one she had worn for her blog photos, was Latrella Jones. Her dark hair was styled elegantly and adorned with fresh flowers, and her face was frozen in a serene expression, as if she were simply asleep. But the unnatural pallor of her skin and the complete absence of movement left no doubt. "Damn!" Tyrone exhaled as he followed her inside. "Yes," Shani confirmed quietly, coming closer. "Judging by the looks of it, she's been gone for several hours." Candles burned around the bed, and the walls were covered with photographs of Latrella and Jerian, most of them clearly taken secretly, from a distance without her knowledge. Some had been altered to make it look like they were together. A clumsy photo montage where Jerian's head had been superimposed onto the body of another man standing next to Latrell. "Call forensics and a medical examiner," Shani ordered, examining the body but not touching it. "And find me Jerian Fraser, immediately." Tyrone went out into the hallway to make a call, while Shani continued to examine the room. On a small table by the window, she found an open laptop with a video playing, Latrella in a wedding dress posing for a photo shoot in Zilker Park. The video had clearly been filmed secretly from a long distance using Zoom. Next to the laptop was a bouquet of white roses, similar to the one Latrella had been holding in the photos, and, making Shani tense, several syringes and vials of clear liquid. In the pocket of the raincoat, neatly hung on the back of a chair, she found Jerian's smartphone. The last messages in his notes were like wedding vows. "I promise to love you forever, in wealth and in poverty, in sickness and in health, until death do us part. Now we will be together forever, my beautiful bride." "Shani!" Tyrone called as he returned to the room. "The officers found traces in the backyard. It looks like Fraser left through the back door when we arrived. They're chasing him into the woods, not far from the shore." "Is he armed?" "We don't know. They didn't find any weapons in the house, but we should assume the worst," Shani finished for him. "Tell them to be extremely careful. And where the hell is DeMarcus?" "He's being held by 2 officers. He's not in the best condition." Shani nodded. She could imagine how DeMarcus was feeling. Losing a loved one is always a tragedy, but to lose him like this, because of the obsession of a mentally unstable person. "Keep looking for Fraser. I'll check the rest of the house." In the living room, Shani found another disturbing discovery, an album filled with magazine clippings about weddings, sample invitations, and a guest list with names of people Latrella probably didn't even know. The last pages contained plans for the honeymoon, a route through Europe, hotels, and places of interest. Everything was planned with maniacal precision, including dates, times, and a budget. In the kitchen cabinet, the detective found a collection of psychotropic drugs, antipsychotics, antidepressants, mood stabilizers. Some packages were almost full, others empty. Judging by the dates on the prescriptions, Jerian must have been taking them regularly, but had obviously stopped treatment. Forensic experts arrived 20 minutes later and immediately set to work, photographing and collecting evidence. After a preliminary examination of the body, medical examiner Dr. Ramona Vasquez turned to Shani. "The preliminary cause of death is an overdose of sedatives. Judging by all appearances, death occurred about 12 hours ago. I'll be able to say more after the autopsy, but there are no signs of physical violence on the body. She was either unconscious or heavily sedated when she died." "He wanted her to look like she was sleeping," Shani muttered. "Like in a fairy tale, Sleeping Beauty." "Possibly," Dr. Vasquez agreed. "It fits the overall picture, The wedding dress, the flowers, the candles. He was creating his own twisted version of a wedding night. The radio on Shani's belt came to life. Detective Magruder, the suspect has been located. Repeating, Fraser has been located at the pier, 500 meters south of the house. Is he resisting? Shani asked, heading for the exit. No, he's just sitting on the edge of the pier, staring at the water. We're waiting for your instructions. Keep him in your sights, but don't approach him. Detective Butts and I will be there in 2 minutes. Tyrone was already waiting for her at the door. They quickly ran through the woods along a narrow path leading to the lake. The dock, an old wooden structure jutting out several meters into the water, was surrounded by police officers with their weapons at the ready. At the very edge of the dock, his legs dangling over the water, sat a man in dark clothing. His shoulders were slumped, his head bowed, as if he were deep in thought. "Jerian Fraser!" Shani called out loudly, slowly approaching the pier. "I'm Detective Shani Magruder from the Austin Police Department. We need to talk." The man slowly turned his head. His face was wet with tears, his eyes empty and lifeless. "She didn't wake up," he said quietly, almost in a whisper. "I waited and waited, but she didn't wake up." Shani exchanged glances with Tyrone and took a few more cautious steps forward. "Jerian, we need you to slowly raise your hands and step away from the edge of the dock. Can you do that?" He looked at her with genuine confusion. "Why? What difference will it make? She's not going to wake up. Our wedding, it's ruined." "What happened, Jerian?" Tyrone asked, approaching from the other side. "What happened to Latrella?" Jerian's face contorted with pain and anger. "She betrayed me. We were supposed to be together. We were planning to get married. I saw the photos. She was in a wedding dress. But then she said it was just for her blog, that she was going to marry someone else." He shook his head, as if he still couldn't believe it. "It was wrong. I had to fix it." "And how did you do that, Jerian?" Shani asked gently, slowly closing the distance between them. "I just helped her fall asleep, so she could think, so she could see that we were meant for each other. I put her in a wedding dress, prepared everything for our wedding. But she didn't wake up." His voice faltered, and he began to cry again, covering his face with his hands. "I didn't want to. I didn't think. She was just supposed to fall asleep and then wake up and realize she loved me. Like in a fairy tale. Like in the movies." Shani and Tyrone simultaneously began to approach him from different sides, slowly, so as not to provoke any sudden movements. "Jerian," Shani said calmly, "Latrella is dead. Do you understand that? What you did killed her." Jerian froze, then slowly looked up at her, his eyes filled with horror and denial. No, that's not true. She's just asleep. I gave her medicine to help her sleep. Just a little. Just so she wouldn't fight when I brought her here. She has to wake up." "You gave her too much, Jerian," Tyrone said, stepping closer. "The medicine you used can stop breathing in large doses. That's what happened." "No!" Jerian shouted, jumping to his feet. "You're lying! She's alive! She has to be alive!" He turned as if to run back to the house, but Tyrone reacted instantly, lunging forward and knocking him to the ground. They both fell onto the wooden dock and wrestled for a few seconds. Shani ran over to help her partner hold Jerian, who was screaming and struggling. "She's alive! Let me go! I have to be with her when she wakes up!" Other officers rushed over to help handcuff him. When Jerian was finally pulled to his feet, his face was contorted with despair. "You don't understand," he sobbed. "We love each other. She's my fiancée, my wife, forever." "Jerian Fraser," Shani said in an official tone, "you are under arrest on suspicion of the murder of Latrella Jones. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in court. You have the right to an attorney." As Shani read him his rights, Jerian stopped resisting. His shoulders slumped, his gaze became empty, lifeless, like a man who had lost all connection with reality. When he was led away, Tyrone turned to Shani. "Do you think he realizes what he's done?" Shani shook her head. "I doubt it. He seems to have a serious mental disorder. I saw medication in the house, antipsychotics, mood stabilizers. It looks like he stopped taking them." "Erotomania?" Tyrone suggested. using a term for a delusional disorder in which a person is convinced that another person, usually of higher social status, is secretly in love with them. Possibly. Combined with obsessive-compulsive disorder and probably schizophrenia, the psychiatrists will figure it out. But I'm almost certain he didn't really understand that his actions would lead to her death. In his distorted reality, he was just helping her see the truth. They slowly walked back to the house, where forensic investigators continued to collect evidence. DeMarcus was waiting for them at the entrance, finally allowed into the crime scene after Latrella's body had been removed and placed in the coroner's vehicle. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Is she dead?" Shani nodded, placing her hand on his shoulder. "I'm so sorry, DeMarcus." How did this happen?" Tyrone explained gently, omitting the most gruesome details. Jerian had apparently been following Latrell on the day of the photo shoot, then waited for her on her way home from the store, drugged her, took her to the lake house, and dressed her in a wedding dress, probably believing he was giving her a real wedding. An overdose of the drug caused her to stop breathing. He didn't even realize he had killed her, Tyrone finished. In his sick mind, she was just asleep and would wake up and realize how much she loved him. DeMarcus listened, his face frozen like a mask. When Tyrone finished, he simply nodded and said, "I want to see her." "Not now," Shani said gently. "Her body is being sent to the morgue for an autopsy. Tomorrow you can say goodbye to her." DeMarcus nodded again, as if on autopilot. "I have to tell her parents. They live in Houston." "We've already contacted them," Shani said. "They're on their way to Austin. Maybe you'd like someone to stay with you tonight? A friend? A relative?" "No, I just want to be alone." The detectives exchanged worried glances. Leaving a man in this state alone was risky. "Listen," Shani said. "Let me drive you home, and we'll stop by your friend's or relative's place on the way. You shouldn't be alone tonight." After some persuasion, DeMarcus agreed to call his brother, who lived nearby. Shani drove him home, made sure his brother had arrived, and left her business card with a request to call any time if he had any questions. When she returned to the police station, she found Tyrone at his computer, looking through the materials collected at Jerian's house. "This is a nightmare," he said when Shani approached. "Did you see his diaries? He's been planning their reunion for years. He followed her every move, knew her schedule, her routes, her habits, and all this time, she didn't even suspect a thing." "That often happens with stalkers," Shani replied, sitting down next to him. "They live in their own reality, where there is a special connection between them and the object of their obsession. Any sign is interpreted as confirmation of their fantasies." "And the photo shoot in a wedding dress was the last straw," Tyrone nodded. In his eyes, it meant she was ready for their own wedding. Shani looked through the notes of the psychiatrist who had been treating Jerian for the past 2 years. According to the records, he had been diagnosed with delusional disorder with elements of erotomania, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and borderline personality disorder. The doctor had repeatedly noted his obsession with his ex-girlfriend and recommended inpatient treatment, but Jerian refused and eventually stopped attending sessions about 3 months ago. "The system failed them both," Shani sighed. "If he had gotten the treatment he needed." "Or if someone had noticed his stalking and taken action," added Tyrone. "Social media has made stalking too easy," Shani shook her head. "People put their whole lives out there, where they live, where they go, who they date. Latella practically handed Jerian all the information he needed to stalk her." "It's not her fault," Tyrone objected. "Of course not. Jerian is entirely to blame. But that doesn't change the fact that modern social media culture creates the perfect environment for stalkers." They finished the paperwork late in the evening. The next morning, Shani was present when Jerian Fraser was charged. He looked lost, disoriented, as if he still didn't understand the reality of what was happening. His lawyer had already stated his intention to argue that his client was not criminally responsible. After the hearing, Shani met with Latrell's parents, an elderly couple devastated by grief. They showed her photos of their daughter as a child and teenager and told her about her dreams and plans. She always wanted to be famous, Latrell's mother said with a sad smile. Back in school, she participated in all the talent contests and ran the school newspaper. Her blog was her way of telling the world about herself. We were concerned about her safety, her father added. We warned her about the risks of publicity, but she was a grown woman, confident in herself. We couldn't stop her from living the way she wanted to. Shani expressed her condolences and assured them that the police would do everything possible to ensure that their daughter's killer was brought to justice. That evening, she stopped by DeMarcus's house to see how he was doing. The young man looked devastated, but was holding up. His brother was still with him, supporting him through this difficult time. I was looking through her blog, DeMarcus said as they sat in the living room. All those comments from Jerian and his fake accounts. How could I not have noticed? How could I not protect her? You couldn't have known, Shanias replied gently. Stalkers are very good at hiding their true intentions, and Latrella, from what I can tell, didn't take him seriously. She mentioned strange messages several times, DeMarcus admitted, but we both thought they were just regular internet trolls. We never imagined anyone could be so obsessed as to... His voice trailed off. Shani gave him time to collect his thoughts before asking, What do you plan to do with her blog and social media accounts? DeMarcus sighed. I don't know. I can't even bring myself to think about it right now. Maybe with time. Maybe I'll keep them as a memorial to her, her dreams, and her talents. As Shani left, DeMarcus stopped her at the door. Detective, do you think she knew? In those last moments, did she understand what was happening? Shani thought about the autopsy results, about the sedatives found in Latrell's blood. No, she said firmly. She was unconscious. She just fell asleep and didn't wake up. She didn't suffer. It was a merciful lie, but Shani believed that DeMarcus deserved at least that small comfort. Back home, Shani sat on her balcony for a long time, looking at the lights of Austin at night. She thought about Latrell, whose life had been cut short so early and so senselessly. About Jerian, whose sick mind had created a twisted version of love that led to tragedy. About DeMarcus, whose future had been destroyed by someone else's obsession. She thought about how social media brings people closer together, but at the same time makes them more vulnerable. About how thin the line is between normal attention and dangerous obsession, and about how no amount of popularity, likes, or followers is worth a human life. Tomorrow will be a new day, with new crimes and new victims. But this story is the story of a girl in a wedding dress who will never be a real bride.